you very much for inviting me back up, Richard. It's a great pleasure to talk about some support that we are going to be offering to businesses. And as Richard said, this is a follow-on from what we've just been hearing. So Anis and Luca have given you a very detailed introduction to what is known and what is coming in the Horizon 2020 programme, and specifically Anis's presentation to the SME support that is new, that I hinted at earlier, that is new in Framework 8 in Horizon 2020, to make sure that this, in the line that Ken Gordon often used, is all about SMEs with added research as opposed to research with added SMEs, which was always the accusation of Framework 7. It's worth dwelling on something that Anis drew out, I think. The participation rate of SMEs in the Framework 7 programmes, relatively low given how important SMEs are to the European economy, the economies of Europe, ours not differently at all. And even more concerning than the participation rate is the proportion of those SMEs who did participate, who felt that the participation in a European project had a material effect on their innovative capacity, their ability to keep their products and services fresh and moving along and making money. So the fact that then leads to the slightly depressing conclusion that for an awful lot of SMEs, engagement in Framework 7 was not particularly productive at all. Now that's for that to be the case for 2/3 of the SMEs who took part in Framework 7 is a very depressing place to be. So the Commission got that and has brought the SME instrument and the change of focus in Horizon 2020 very much to the fore, partly in order to make sure that the economies of Europe are what benefit from the innovation in Europe, in addition to the research capacity of Europe's wonderful universities, Scotland's, of course, being amongst the most wonderful of all. And I would say that because we pay for them. Before I go into this instrument, I'd like to reflect on another thing, abusing the position I have standing at the front here in front of you. I'd like to reflect a little bit more on Sean's very helpful discussion of the potential of the Innovation Centre in construction. We're very, very excited about the Innovation Centre in construction, as we are in all of the 3 existing Innovation Centres and the hopefully 5 that we will be able to approve sometime in the very near future, one of which we hope to be in construction. We are very excited by the response of the construction industry and the academics in the relevant areas of Scotland's universities to the potential to build this cluster, and we really, really do hope that it fulfills all of its potential. One of those potentials is definitely to act as a focus for the attraction of Horizon 2020 funding, for the coordination of the use of European funds, for the extension of that opportunity into businesses who perhaps are a little bit wary of it or perhaps not aware of it, and the exploitation of European funds to create jobs and growth in Scotland. So we're very excited about the work that is being done across the Scottish construction industry, and we look forward very much to reaching a conclusion on that proposal. So let's get on to what I was here to talk about. So I've talked a little bit about that slightly depressing participation of SMEs in earlier framework programmes, and some of the things that have maybe put those SMEs off are obvious to you. But let's contrast that participation with the participation of Scotland's universities. So Scotland's universities in the Framework 7 programme, highly participative, extremely good. You could even say, without the risk of more than slight exaggeration, that Scotland's universities have become perfectly attuned machines for the attraction of European money. Now they've done that in several ways. One of them is, of course, because the research and development work that is carried out in Scotland's universities is fantastic. Another one is because they have devoted significant resources over long periods to understanding the processes, understanding how to do this, building consortia. Another reason is because academics are, in the main, relatively collaborative, so building consortia and working in multi-country teams comes naturally. And another reason is that they're large organisations. Okay? Now, contrast a university then with an SME. An SME might be doing fantastic work, but by definition it's not a large organisation. Probably by definition it's not been around for several hundred years to build an extensive bureaucracy, or even several tens of years, or maybe even several years to build an extensive bureaucracy to support some of these external facing activities. It may not be working in a sector where transnational collaboration is a normal way to do business and to build product lines and to work in supply chains and so forth. So we got to thinking, as part of that work that I was referring to earlier in how the public sector could support Scotland's ambitions in Horizon 2020, we got to thinking, how could we marry these two realities? So we have come up with a suggestion that we could increase, could we not, the engagement in Horizon 2020 by small and medium-sized enterprises, and indeed by Scottish universities. That's always our ambition, of course. With the Scottish Funding Council, we care about the universities as a core business. But we could improve the success of both of these communities by helping them to work together. But we are particularly interested in the context I'm talking about here, in the increased success of small and medium-sized enterprises. A stronger role, a role where more of those SMEs are actually making money and jobs. And of course, you'd imagine as an NDPB of the Scottish Government that what we care about is sustainable economic growth in this context. So here's the punchline. Got to it quite quickly, really. We have launched the Horizon 2020 SME Engagement Scheme, or what you might also call Horizon 2020 vouchers. This is, I'll come back to that picture in a second, but this is a modestly scaled amount of money, up to £5,000, relatively easily accessed through a very short application form by an SME working in partnership with a university. I'll come back to that partnership in some detail in a minute, in order to assist that SME in approaching a Horizon 2020 application, whether it's against a call or whether it's in that bottom-up process that Alice was explaining to you is new, where there are no calls, there is just the opportunity to suggest excellent projects. So in any of these modes, to help an SME get to the place where that can actually go in. Now, we have been told many times and often that for a small company, reducing the risk of participation in framework programs is very, very important. That risk includes the financial risk and the time risk of investing in the things that we absolutely need SMEs to be able to do if they're going to participate at the much higher and more successful level that I was referring to earlier. So in order to actually be a core member of a consortium, you're going to need to get to Brussels and be engaged in the briefing meetings. You're going to need to be meeting your European partners in Munich, Seville, wherever. You're going to need to be consulting with Commission officials. You might need to be visiting Scotland Europa in person in Brussels and talking about what's coming and what the opportunity is and how to frame the proposal. So all of that needs time and money. Time we can't give you because we don't have time to donate like that, but money we can. So the intention is that in order to support SMEs with engagement with EU officials and structures, building consortia, and to some degree the preparation of the proposal itself, we would like to offer a modest amount of money. Now, come back to that in a second. So, universities then, where do universities fit in this? Why don't we just give SMEs money? Well, for two reasons we wouldn't just give SMEs money. One, we're not allowed to because we have funding council, it's not what we're allowed to do. Second thing is, though, we'd be missing a colossal trick if we did that. As I said at the beginning of my remarks, that the thing that we notice is that our universities are very, very skilled at managing all of those I've just been referring to. So we would like to pass that money through a university partner so that the university can assist the SME in some of those processes. Now, there's two different scenarios. One, where the university is actually working with the SME, probably in the same consortium potentially on that project, and therefore they are naturally working together and it makes complete sense. Secondly, the other scenario is that there is no Scottish university working with that SME on that proposal, a potential proposal or actual proposal, potentially because it's a single SME proposal or because there simply isn't a Scottish university involved. Doesn't really matter. We would still ask the university to assist the SME with some of that, paying for flights and all that kind of stuff, transferring money through to the SME to deal with all of that, but also assisting the SME with advice and support through the proposal process. We'd allow some of that £5,000 to be used, of course, to compensate the university at a reasonable rate for some of that time. How would it work? Well, many of you will be familiar with Interface. Many of you will be familiar with the innovation vouchers that Interface already administer on behalf of ourselves and the two enterprise agencies. So essentially, we're using the same architecture. So Interface have people who will support this process. They will support the application process. That will work in much the same way. Similar definitions of what an SME is, how will it work, are in place to support this. And therefore, we can promise you a rapid turnaround and a neat and simple system that is well tried and tested. And I'm delighted to say we already have one application sitting on our desks to be reviewed tomorrow morning, I think. So a company has already come to us with its first plan. So we need the SME with a university partner to identify to us what kind of activities might be needed to support its engagement, to give it the knowledge it needs, to give it the network it needs, to give it the partnership it needs to be a significant applicant, to tell us what that might be over a reasonable time frame. So aiming for a call that we know closes in 4 months' time, this is what we will need to do in that period. This trip, that meeting, this bit of work by the university at such and such a rate. If it's not a call that's being aimed for, we expect that work package to be described over a sensible time period. So if you're aiming for a proposal in that bottom-up way, then presumably there'll be some kind of self-imposed deadline on that we would like to see. And that's what we will say yes to, those kinds of activities, flexibly, as flexibly as we possibly can manage. And at the bottom you can see what we'll say no to, which is we're wanting to use the expertise of universities to support businesses. I'm afraid we can't help businesses engage the services of consultancies to support them in the EU application process, though that might be a perfectly sensible way to do it in many situations. It's as simple as this. That's how we apply. There is a subset of the Interface website with all of the rules and regulations and processes and forms and so forth on it. It's very, very straightforward. Or you can phone them, and Siobhan and her colleagues will help you very enthusiastically through this process. And as I say, we opened this earlier this month, even though we have no calls to aim for. But we wanted to be sure that businesses knew that this was available, and I wanted to be able to come to this phase 2 set of events saying this is now available, as opposed to what I had to say in the first round of events, which was this is what we're planning. Now, I'd be delighted to answer questions, and I'd be delighted, of course, to talk about innovation centres or anything else that the Funding Council is involved in. There's one other thing before we get to questions, which I forgot to say earlier from my list. Which was another reference to structural funds. I think it was very helpful when we started this morning to reflect on the fact that the Commission wants us to use structural funds and Horizon 2020 as much in parallel as we can to achieve the best possible benefit to the European economy for the European taxpayer. Now this is, I think, not only is that a tremendous thing to do because it gives us guidance and steers us very well, but we have responded to that within Scottish Government by adopting a plan for how we will run structural funds that will make that so much easier by bringing agencies such as ourselves and the enterprise agencies and SDS and various others closer to the process of how ERDF and ESF will be managed so that we can achieve that synergy more effectively. So we're quite excited, as you can imagine, about the next phase of European funding. It's going to be have a much greater potential, we hope, for Scotland. And let's face it, we didn't do too badly last time. Thank you very much.
I guess we just move on to the next important thing is questions and answers straight.
Yeah, right, yeah, no.
The opportunity. Has anyone on the floor got some questions? Just the gentleman on the left-hand side.
Yeah, well, just by curiosity, are SMEs ever leading proposals to the FP7? Because I think that might be the issue if they say they don't get what they wanted out of it. They say 35% of them only didn't get, or I can't remember, what they wanted.
Yes.
Then maybe it's because they were not on the driving seat. That was that I mentioned.
You start.
Okay, so the question is about the role of SMEs and them actually maybe leading the proposals. One of the big aspects of an SME is obviously the capacity they have and the time they can dedicate to a project. So it is the case that the majority of SMEs who do participate do take a role, not as the coordinator, but as a key player within the consortia. However, what we're hoping and what has been, and there are examples of this happening, is that SMEs start getting experience within the framework programs and as a partner, and then they move up along the food chain to actually leading and leading a project, an application, and the project as a whole. And there is examples of that, and there's actually one of the unfortunately people who can't be here is from IES, Integrated Environmental Solutions, and they're a perfect example of that. They came in looking at FP7 and they've actually taken both national and actually other funding and then progressed to FP7 and done it as a partner. And now they're actually leading on, I know at least one project, maybe more, and trailblazing and actually having a large, strong voice within Europe.
So the short answer is yes, that has happened and will increasingly happen, particularly because the instruments in this new period of time are more directed that way. But it's also critically important, even if an SME is not taking a leading position in a consortium in a Horizon 2020 call, that SME actually benefits from participation. It seems almost unthinkable that the majority of SMEs who participated did not feel that they benefited. That's crazy. So we want to be in a position where the SMEs are able to participate in ways that are useful to them and to their business, because that's going to be economically valuable as well as being sensible use of public money, obviously. So part of what I've just been talking about is to help SMEs take a more active and engaged role in designing the project, in being a more active member of the consortium that is putting it forward, so that they get something out of it that has a business impact for them, a positive business impact for them. That's critically important, that we raise that level of ambition and success for the SME community who do take part, and that we increase the number of SMEs who take part at all.
I'd just like to add one last thing to that, is when we go back to the SME instrument, which we talked about 20 minutes ago, again, the SMEs are the focus of the calls and they're the projects. So they are the ones, and especially within that instrument, those who will actually be leading that project. I'll just go to the gentleman on the left-hand side.
Hi, I'm Eddie Lindsay from Derrycourt. I applaud what you're trying to do. Do you think you've got the scale and funding for? I've recently written an FP7 proposal. I think it took about 6 more months or whatever. £1 to £5,000 we're looking at.
No, and we're not pretending that we are going to be paying for everything that is required to get a proposal from idea to submitted. We're consciously keeping the quantum of support relatively low for two reasons. One that we want it to be fast, low bureaucracy, and very flexible. The more money you put into something, the slower, more careful and more oversight is required by obvious kind of risk management. So we want it to be easy, we want it to be quick, we want it to be flexible. We also want it to be available to an awful lot of participants. We've set aside £400,000 for this year, so we could fund 80 of these this year alone. We'll ask for more money if we need it. We'll spend it on something else if we don't. So we are reducing risk. We're not paying for the whole proposal process by any intent. That's not the intention. It's reducing the risk to help more SMEs have a higher appetite for finding out about the potential to them. Because ultimately, if the potential value to an SME of participation isn't at some point in the application process judged to be reasonably high, then they shouldn't be there in the first place. That would be a rubbish business decision, almost certainly. So subsidising the whole application process wouldn't seem hugely sensible. However, helping the SME to reach the level of understanding, comfort and embeddedness in a planning phase, so that they're actually able to take the business decision, yeah, this is important for us. That's what we're trying to achieve. We think it would be counterproductive if we simply subsidised everything, and then people might go along for the ride for without actually getting any more value out of it. That doesn't seem sensible.
Can I go to Sean next?
In terms of I noticed the travel plan, Stuart, you mentioned going maybe to Brussels,
Yeah.
etc. But I take it it's also the other way, so there's an opportunity to host European partners on a big project with the SME to bring them in, the time spent in developing that day.
Yeah.
I mean, people probably pay, like these companies probably pay for their own travel
Yeah.
again, but we don't have to literally Scotland to
So-
use the voucher.
So we thought about that, and actually, though you might not like the answer is no. We're not enthusiastic about using that money to support the companies or companies of other countries to participate, and so we're leaving that to them. Now that might sound as though we're cutting off our nose slightly to spite our face there, but we realise that is not on the core line of argument, which is helping our SMEs to understand better and to get out there more. So no, is the short answer. We wouldn't encourage that form of spending.
In the case of a Scottish SME who a particular project where they're going to partner with other European SMEs,
Yeah.
I wouldn't intend to spend any funding on European SMEs, but in terms of the potential is to bring that consortia together.
Yeah.
We would literally have to leave Scotland essentially to use this voucher. We could use the voucher here based in Scotland, bringing partners in with the SME.
I don't think we want you to spend that money on the travel costs of those SMEs coming into Scotland. We might be slightly more nuanced about the costs of hosting the event, maybe.
Gentleman just far at the back.
17% of the MSEs is a target figure for Horizon 2020. And that 17%, is that made up of consumption funding or just participation?
There is a particular target within Horizon 2020 in regards to the number of SMEs who will be participating. It's not a simple out of the whole of Horizon 2020. I think it's 20%, 25% target of participation. It's actually focusing on two areas. One of them is the participations within the societal challenges. So that was I don't know why I'm looking up there, but it was the third pillar when we had the slide up previously. And also aspects of the industrial leadership pillar. So that would be the key enabling technologies and also the SME instrument. So there is actually a push and an increased target for the participation of SMEs. And it's not just participation of SMEs as in they're in my consortia, it's the percentage of the EC's contribution, which is the...
Is that 17% consumption of overall funding, or is it just participation?
It's the target that's set by the European Commission is based on the financial contribution. So
that's 70% of the Framework 7 funds were consumed by SMEs.
Can I ask a quick question, which is, I mean, you point out about FP7 being under appreciated by SMEs. I think a lot of that was to do with they didn't really understand it. It wasn't marketed to them, it was marketed to the universities. Is this still the same thing where it's universities have to find the SMEs, or is there some dimension in which SMEs, which are unfamiliar with working with academia, can help to that process?
Well, several strands to the answer to that. Part of what we are doing in this sequence of events is trying to take the Horizon 2020 opportunity to the business community across major sectors. So we're actively doing that in our partnerships through these events. You'll hear more from my colleagues from Scotland Europe and Enterprise Europe Network shortly about what can be done to support SMEs, particularly in partnership finding, consortium building, understanding the proposals and keeping in touch. We do expect that networks and consortia such as the innovation centres that Sean was referring to in construction and the ones in the other areas that we're building will have a significant role in helping companies within their orbit see what the potential of a particular call or line of commission thinking is, and therefore assist with that communication flow so that it is not entirely coming through universities, understandably filtered slightly by their own view of the world. So we do very seriously understand the Commission to be moving to wanting the SMEs to be right at the centre, right at the core, as Anis put up in his first slide, right at the core of what Horizon 2020 is about. So our job in the public sector is to work rather hard to make sure that that communication happens. These vouchers, by the way, are also part of that response, because if an SME thinks potentially this does look interesting, but the only way I'm going to find out if it really is relevant is to go and talk to a few people, then we would like that to be something that we can subsidise, so that talking happens and they can find out whether or not that proposition really is something they want to take part in.